There are moments in life when you think you have everything figured out, when coming home after a long day feels like the most natural thing in the world. I am Madeline, 28 years old, and I had always loved the feeling of pulling into my driveway after another demanding day at the law firm. The house my mother left me was everything I cherished about home. A quiet neighborhood in Connecticut, a small garden I tended with care and memories woven into every corner. My stepfather, Richard, had been living with me since Mom passed away 2 years ago, and while our relationship was complicated, I thought we had found a way to coexist. But that Thursday evening, as I turned the corner onto my street, something was terribly wrong. A bright red sign stood prominently on my front lawn, and my heart began to race before I could even read what it said. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And if this story makes you think about the people you trust most in your family, please hit that like button to share this emotional journey with me. Do not forget to subscribe to this channel, because you will want to hear how this unbelievable situation unfolds and what happened when karma finally caught up with someone who thought they could get away with the ultimate betrayal. Trust me, you will not see this ending coming. Let me tell you a bit more about my situation. I had worked incredibly hard to get where I was as a young attorney at a prestigious law firm in Hartford. My mother, Sarah, had been my everything, and when she lost her battle with cancer, she left me our beautiful colonial house worth around $800,000. Richard, who was 52 and had been unemployed for over a year, moved in with me after the funeral. I thought it was temporary, just until he got back on his feet. But as months turned into a year, then too our living arrangement became increasingly strained. Richard constantly complained about the costs of maintaining such a large house, suggesting we should sell and move to a smaller apartment. He would make comments about how I did not need such luxury at my age, how practical it would be to downsize. I always brushed off these conversations, thinking he was just stressed about his financial situation. I had no idea he was planning something that would shake the very foundation of my world. The sold sign hit me like a physical blow. I sat in my car for several minutes, staring at those 4 letters in disbelief. My hands were trembling as I fumbled for my phone to call Richard, but it went straight to voicemail. I stumbled out of my car and walked toward the sign on unsteady legs. The bright red lettering seemed to mock me, and underneath it was the name of a real estate agency I had never heard of before. Mrs. Patterson, my elderly neighbor, appeared at her fence, as if she had been waiting for this moment. "Oh, honey," she said with genuine concern in her voice. "I have been seeing people come and go all week. Fancy cars, well-dressed couples with clipboards. I thought you knew about it, so I did not want to pry. But there was so much activity I was starting to wonder what was going on." I managed to thank her while my mind raced. All week. This had been happening all week while I was at work, completely unaware that my own home was being shown to potential buyers. The realization that this was not some mistake began to sink in, replaced by a cold dread that made my stomach churn. When Richard finally came home that evening around 9 o'clock, he had a look on his face I had never seen before. There was something almost triumphant about his expression, a smugness that made my skin crawl. He walked into the living room where I was waiting with the real estate flyer I had found stuck in the front door. "We need to talk," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos in my head. "Yes, we do," he replied, settling into the armchair across from me with an air of satisfaction. "I have some news. I sold the house. Got $750,000 for it. Not bad considering we needed to move quickly." The words hit me like a freight train. "You did what, Richard? This is my house. You cannot sell my house." He waved his hand dismissively. "Madeline, you do not need a luxury home at your age. You are young, you can rent an apartment just fine. I needed the money for an important investment opportunity. Besides, maintaining this place is bleeding us dry with property taxes, utilities, maintenance. It is completely impractical for someone your age." I stood up so quickly that the coffee table shook. "This is not your decision to make. This house is in my name." "How could you possibly sell something you do not own?" Richard's smile grew wider, and I realized with growing horror that he had planned this conversation, had anticipated my questions. Actually, your name is on the deed alongside mine, remember? Your mother added my name when we got married. And you have been so busy with work signing all those insurance papers and estate documents after your mother passed. You signed quite a few things without reading them carefully. My blood ran cold as I remembered the stack of paperwork that had followed Mom's death. Insurance claims, probate documents, bank forms. Richard had been so helpful organizing everything, telling me where to sign. I had been grieving and overwhelmed, grateful for his assistance. The possibility that he had been collecting samples of my signature had never crossed my mind. The next morning, I took a personal day and drove straight to the town clerk's office. What I discovered there made me physically ill. Someone had filed papers transferring my interest in the house to Richard, complete with my forged signature. The signature was close enough to pass a casual inspection, but I could see the differences, the hesitation marks, where someone had been copying rather than writing naturally. At the real estate office, I learned that Richard had presented himself as my husband, claiming that I was eager to sell quickly due to financial pressures. The agent, a young woman named Jessica, showed me emails where I had supposedly expressed enthusiasm about the sale and urgency about closing quickly. That evening, Richard was packing suitcases in his bedroom, humming to himself. When he saw me in the doorway, he did not even have the decency to look ashamed. "I suppose you spent the day playing detective," he said, continuing to fold expensive-looking clothes into his luggage. "I hope you learned something useful." "I learned that you are a criminal," I replied. "Forgery is a felony, Richard." He laughed, actually laughed. "And what are you going to do about it?" "Call the police. Tell them your stepfather, who has been supporting you emotionally since your mother died, made a business decision about a house he legally co-owns. Tell them you want to send a grieving widower to prison because you are ungrateful for everything he has done for your family." The manipulation in his voice made me sick. But there was more. "Besides," he continued, "I am leaving tomorrow for a 3-week tour of Europe. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, all the places your mother and I never got to visit together. First-class flights, 5-star hotels, the works. Cost me $50,000, but I figure I have earned it after everything I have sacrificed to take care of you and your mother these past few years." I stared at him in complete disbelief. "You are spending $50,000 on a vacation with money from selling my house. I'm spending money I earned from making a smart real estate decision. Your mother would want me to be happy, Madeline. She would want me to live a little instead of being trapped in this expensive house with someone who clearly does not appreciate what I have done for this family." The next few days felt like a nightmare I could not wake up from. While Richard prepared for his European adventure, I dove deep into research mode, using every legal skill I had learned in law school and my early career. I discovered that Richard had a history I had never known about. Through public records and some careful social media investigation, I found traces of at least 3 other women he had been involved with over the past 15 years. In each case, there were hints of financial impropriety, sudden disappearances, and broken promises. One woman Linda had posted on a support forum about a man matching Richard's description who had convinced her to take out a second mortgage on her home for a business investment that never materialized. Another, Patricia, had written a blog post about a man who had stolen jewelry and electronics before vanishing after she refused to marry him. The pattern was becoming clear. Richard was a predator who targeted vulnerable women, usually those dealing with loss or financial stress. I found emails on his laptop that he had carelessly left open. The messages revealed the true scope of his planning. He had been researching the value of our house within months of my mother's death. There were drafts of emails to realtors asking about quick sale strategies. Most damning of all was a message to someone named Marcus, where Richard wrote, "The girl is completely clueless. Spends all day at work, signs whatever I put in front of her. This will be easier than I thought." When I confronted him with this evidence 2 nights before his departure, Richard did not even try to deny it. If anything, he seemed annoyed that I had figured it out. "You think you are so smart with your law degree and your fancy job," he said, zipping up his garment bag. "But you missed the most important lesson: family takes care of family. I took care of your mother when she was sick. I comforted her. I was there for her. I made her last year's bearable. That investment deserves a return." The callousness of reducing my mother's love to a business transaction made me see red. "You married her for her money. You never loved her." "Love?" he scoffed. "What did love ever get your mother a modest teacher's salary and a house she could barely afford on her own? I gave her security companionship, someone to share her burdens with, and now I'm collecting on that investment. The house sale will give me enough to live comfortably for several years, maybe find another nice woman to settle down with." The night before his flight, Richard made a point of showing me his travel documents. Business class tickets to Paris, confirmed reservations at the Hotel Plaza Athénée, a detailed itinerary of guided tours, and Michelin-starred restaurants. He spread it all out on the kitchen table, like he was taunting me. "While I am sipping wine in French vineyards," he said with a cruel smile, "you will be apartment hunting. The new owners take possession in 2 weeks. I suggest you start packing." But Richard had made a critical error. He had underestimated exactly how determined and resourceful a trained attorney could be when pushed to her breaking point. The morning after his revelation, I was on the phone with the buyers before 7 a.m. Tom and Jennifer Chen were a young couple with twin toddlers, and they were devastated when I explained the situation. They had been planning to move in within the month, had already given notice on their rental, had started researching schools for their children. "I am so sorry this happened to your family," Jennifer said during our phone call. "We had no idea there was fraud involved. Of course, we will cooperate with whatever legal action you need to take." My next call was to my firm's litigation department. While I normally handled corporate contracts, I knew attorneys who specialized in real estate fraud. Within hours, I had a team assembled and was filing emergency motions with the county court. The evidence was overwhelming: forged signatures, fraudulent representation, and clear intent to defraud. The judge who reviewed our emergency petition was a stern woman in her 60s who had clearly seen this type of case before. "Miss Anderson," she said after reviewing our filing, "this appears to be a textbook case of real estate fraud. I am granting your request for an immediate freeze on all related accounts and a halt to the property transfer." By noon on the day Richard was supposed to fly to Paris, every bank account associated with his name was frozen. The real estate transaction was void. The title company that was supposed to handle the closing was under investigation. I had also filed a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office, complete with handwriting analysis and documentation of the forged signatures. But I was not finished. Using resources from my law firm, I tracked down Richard's previous victims. Linda agreed to file charges in her state. Patricia had kept detailed records of her interactions with Richard and was eager to see justice served. By the end of the week, Richard had outstanding warrants in 3 states. The most satisfying part was letting Richard enjoy his vacation in blissful ignorance. He called twice from Paris, both times, to gloat about the amazing restaurants and museums he was visiting. In one call, he described his suite overlooking the Champs-Élysées and mentioned that he was already planning his next trip, perhaps to Switzerland or Austria. "I hope you have found a nice little apartment," he said during the second call. "Something practical and within your budget. This traveling lifestyle really suits me. I think your mother would be happy knowing I'm finally getting to enjoy life instead of being tied down to domestic responsibilities." While Richard was touring the Louvre and dining at Le Meurice, I was working with locksmiths to change every lock on the house. I installed a comprehensive security system with cameras covering every entrance. I worked with my attorney to prepare a complete legal file documenting every aspect of Richard's fraud. Most importantly, I tracked down the apartment building where Richard had lived before marrying my mother. It had been converted to condos and sold years ago. Richard literally had nowhere to go. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee, watching the security monitor, when a taxi pulled up to the curb. Richard climbed out tanned and relaxed, pulling 2 large suitcases behind him. He looked like he had gained weight from all the rich French food, and he was wearing what appeared to be an expensive new jacket. I watched through the window as Richard approached the front door, with the confidence of someone who believed he owned the place. He reached for his keys, tried the lock, and his expression shifted from casual annoyance to confusion when the key would not turn. He tried again, jiggling the handle, then stepped back to examine the door, as if it might have been replaced while he was gone. After a few more attempts, he rang the doorbell. I waited a full minute before opening the door, and the look on his face when he saw me was priceless. He had clearly expected to find an empty house or perhaps someone from the moving company packing my belongings. "Madeline," he said, his voice carefully controlled, "there seems to be a problem with the locks." "Hello, Richard," I replied calmly. "Welcome back. I trust you had a wonderful time in Europe. Thank you for sending those photos from the Eiffel Tower. I particularly enjoyed the one of you toasting with champagne at that expensive restaurant. It will make excellent evidence." His tan seemed to fade a little as he processed my words. "Evidence for what? And why are my keys not working?" "Your keys do not work because you do not live here anymore," I said simply. "As for evidence, I am referring to the documentation of how you spent the money you stole when you fraudulently sold my house." Richard's jaw tightened, and I could see him calculating his options. "Now wait just a minute. I have every right to be in this house. My name is on the deed, and I have been living here for 2 years. You cannot just change the locks and keep me out." "Actually, I can," I said, pulling out a folded paper from my pocket. "This is a restraining order. It prohibits you from coming within 500 feet of this property. It also prohibits you from contacting me directly or indirectly." As Richard read the document, his face went through several shades of red. "This is ridiculous. You cannot prove I did anything wrong. The house sale was legitimate, and I have every right to make financial decisions about property I co-own." "You are right that it might be difficult to prove," I said, "which is why I am so grateful you documented your activities so thoroughly. The photos you posted on social media showing your spending spree really helped establish a timeline. Also, the handwriting expert who analyzed your forgery of my signature was very thorough in her report." It was at that moment that I saw real fear in Richard's eyes for the first time. "What handwriting expert?" "The one the district attorney's office hired when I filed criminal charges against you for fraud, forgery, and theft. Also, Linda Martinez and Patricia Williams send their regards. They are looking forward to testifying about your previous fraudulent activities." A police car turned the corner at that moment, moving slowly down our street. Richard noticed it immediately, and his body language shifted from aggressive to defensive. "You called the cops on me?" he asked, and for the first time since I had known him, Richard sounded genuinely worried. "I did not need to call them," I replied. "They have been looking for you. Something about multiple outstanding warrants and a flight risk who just returned from an international trip." The police car pulled into my driveway, and 2 officers got out. The older of the 2 approached us while his partner stayed by the car. "Richard Morrison?" the officer asked. "Yes," Richard replied weakly. "You are under arrest for fraud, forgery, and theft in the 1st degree. You have the right to remain silent." As the officer read Richard his rights, I watched the man who had tried to steal my home and my future getting handcuffed in my own driveway. The irony was not lost on me. He had spent the last of the stolen money on a luxury vacation, and now he was facing years in prison with no home to return to. "Madeline," Richard said as they led him toward the police car, "please, I will pay you back. I will give you every penny. We can work this out as family." I looked at him with the same coldness he had shown me when he announced the sale of my house. "Richard, you were never my family. You were a con artist who saw an opportunity and took it. The difference between us is that when I saw an opportunity for justice, I took it too. The weeks that followed Richard's arrest were a time of healing I had not expected. At first, the house felt too quiet, too empty, without the constant tension of his presence. But gradually, I began to reclaim the space as truly mine. I cleaned out his room and converted it into a home office. I spent weekends tending to my mother's garden, planting new flowers and vegetables. I invited friends over for dinner parties, something I had never felt comfortable doing while Richard lived there. The legal proceedings moved faster than I had anticipated. With overwhelming evidence and testimony from his previous victims, Richard's attorney advised him to accept a plea deal. He would serve 18 months in state prison and pay full restitution to all his victims. More importantly, he would be barred from ever claiming any interest in my property. But the most valuable lesson I learned was not about legal procedures or property rights. It was about the importance of standing up for yourself when someone tries to take advantage of your grief, your trust, or your generosity. For months after my mother's death, I had felt guilty about every expense, every decision, every moment of happiness. Richard had exploited that guilt, making me feel like I did not deserve the home my mother had left me. Now, sitting in my living room on quiet Sunday mornings, I understand that this house is not just about the building or the property value. It represents my mother's love, her years of hard work, her hope that I would have a secure foundation to build my life upon. When someone tries to take that away from you, whether they are a stranger or someone you considered family, you have not just the right, but the responsibility to fight back. There are some things in life that cannot be measured in dollars, and there are some people who will never understand the value of what they are trying to take from you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to say no, to stand your ground, and to refuse to let anyone convince you that you deserve less than what you have earned and what you have been given by those who truly loved you. What would you have done if you came home to find a sold sign on your house? Have you ever had to deal with someone who tried to take advantage of your trust during a difficult time? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because I would love to hear your stories and advice. If this story reminded you to value and protect what matters most to you, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself and finding strength in the most challenging situations. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you always have more power than you think when it comes to protecting what belongs to you. Take care of yourselves and the people you love,